Welcome to the real 97th episode of the Supernatural Occurrence Studies Podcast.
So damn paranormal.
My name is Jason Knight, host of the show, and with me this evening is
Oscar Spector,
producer extraordinaire and podcast co-host. Also in the studio this evening is the lovely, the beautiful, the yummy
Katie Knight. Hey.
All right, turn off the mic. She missed
What
her
was
cue.
that before I introduced myself? All those nice things that you were saying?
That's right. I gotta
and now
keep...
all of a sudden I have to turn
Not even a
off my
moment
mic and
after.
get kicked out. Wow.
But you kind of missed your cue. You hesitated.
Because I was waiting for more.
That's all you get.
That's all you shouldn't. Yeah, you shouldn't bite. Yeah, you shouldn't expect too much.
Oh my God.
So welcome to the show, listeners, the actual episode 97. You're going to get a complete episode this evening, but
Watch real intruders come in.
yeah,
So
I don't
wait,
know.
why are we having an episode now?
The last episode, when we
A
sat
recap.
down to record the real episode 97, just a whole bunch of real weird shit happened.
A lot of it was taped online. Taped as that was happening. I mean.
I can't
It's
wait to
on
hear
the
it.
show. Yeah, and actually that show isn't even out yet. I still have to post it.
Right, as of this recording, it hasn't been posted yet.
Yes.
And I'm so sad to have missed it.
Yeah, we were going to wake you up, but I
But
just
we
didn't
said we don't want
to.
you to have fun.
Oh,
Yeah,
Basically,
I
God
just
forbid.
knew that you were not up there, and neither was Nico, and we were hearing voices, and apparently the voices sort of came out on the show.
yeah,
It recorded it when
I would say so.
when I dropped in on my Alexa to the kitchen. Those voices were there, and I could tell you since that goddamn voodoo doll has been out of the house, nothing has happened.
And it's
since
in
the
your
last
house now,
recording.
right?
It's in my car.
It's in his car.
Do you
which-
have any experiences
that
in
might
your
be
car?
worse.
I was watching Veronica Mars.
In your car?
Yeah, and
That's scary.
yeah, and that was cool. That was it.
Yeah.
No,
Hey, you didn't get in a car
I
accident.
sometimes sleep in my car,
Ouch.
but nothing happens.
Nothing since the voodoo doll's been
Nah.
in my car.
No.
I've been down here a lot over the past couple days. Haven't had that heavy, sort of oppressive, confusing, short of breath feeling down here. And I'll tell you, I thought about it. That voodoo doll, I brought down quite a few hours before we actually recorded. Because you know how I come down and set everything up. And
Yeah.
I had the voodoo doll sitting over here.
In the
kind of
bag?
behind me in the bag. But it was sitting down here for a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, maybe it was just the voodoo doll was permeating down here or something, but it was giving off. I don't know. I really think that might have had something to do with it because right now it feels fine in here.
Well, that voodoo doll was supposed to be for protection.
It was supposed to be for
I wonder if
protection, but
maybe something else was in here and it was just trying to get it out
Well,
of
we
here.
talked about it
that
be like
could have been too.
It could have been like forces of two different forces like trying to duke it out.
Like between
talked
good
about
and
that.
evil.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
No, or evil and evil, just two different factions of evil. you know?
Duking it out. I like that.
Yeah.
And who knows? Hey, listen, I don't know if it was the voodoo doll or what, but it's just really
Don't forget,
strange.
we also have that nice slate upstairs that's 100, 150 years old from New Orleans.
Yeah, but no,
That might have
I don't
some-
think that's what it was.
Residue.
But yeah, the voodoo doll was, it means protection, but it all goes down to, and I kind of talk about this in this episode, it comes down to the intent of the person who created it, the voodoo practitioner
Right. And
who
I
created.
asked Jay specific questions like, did you ask the shopkeeper like, what was the guy thinking about when he made the doll?
Yeah, they didn't.
You know, like isn't that a part of it?
They just sell
Right.
it. you
Yeah,
know.
right. I know. Oh.
But
They just work there.
we gave it to Oscar with good intention, you know. So hopefully that overrides anything. I don't know what it was. But since it's been out of the fucking house,
Maybe it's
haven't
more
felt a
specific.
thing,
Like if your
haven't
immediate,
heard a thing.
yeah. Maybe it's more specific. Like what if you were thinking of, I don't know, like a traumatic flash of memory as you were handing it over, and that's what you gave me. You know,
Like
how literal
Like
is it?
subliminally, the intent changed, and
Yeah.
now the property of the voodoo doll changed. I don't know.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, our minds
I-
are thinking a mile a minute, so you never know.
Yeah, I do believe that energy.
Or 2 kilometers for international listeners.
That's right. I do believe that energy can attach to objects. You know, so who knows? Maybe there's some transference of negative energy. Now that item is out of the home, everything's fine. Because
Yeah, we didn't have that crazy
Everything's
of
fine.
energy in the house before.
yeah, no, that was intense. So
Maybe some shadows here and there, but
what happened with Lexy?
Well, that
Because we had to call the show.
yes.
She was not a happy person. She
No.
was not in a good state of mind.
No, the last time I saw her this way was once we were driving, I want to say 3 a.m., maybe 4 a.m., but maybe that was too late. I don't remember. We were driving by her place in Niles, Illinois. Real place, not like that zip code that he gives you. And then we were driving by a park, specifically Golf Mill Park, and it was obviously, and it's at the end of the park, there's usually some transients who sleep there and stuff. And
Yeah.
the cops don't seem to care, I guess, because they sleep there. I mean, I see them pretty often there, so I guess they're not interrupted. Cool, more power to them. And we saw this guy, not clean in any way, but he was wide awake, but he would look like kind of sleazy. And he approached the car when I approached the stop, and he started asking questions. Like he wanted to know, I forget exactly because it was over a year ago, but he was asking questions about if we saw someone in the park, or he was looking for someone, or a car nearby, or something like that. He made it seem like it was an emergency. Oh no, someone was hurt, and he wanted me to call.
I think you've told this story on the show before.
I must have, yeah. And then Lexy freaked the hell out in the car and like begged me to leave him there in mid sentence, and I did because she was like freaking out. That's the last time I saw her freak out the way she did here
A few nights ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's fucked up. She was actually hiding. Obviously, listeners can't see, but we have this big sort of furniture piece back behind where we're recording, and it's pushed away from the wall a bit. One of the kids must have pushed it, but she hid behind that furniture piece in the corner of the room. You couldn't even fucking see her when I came down here.
Yeah, well, I put her there. Because at that point, I was thinking the actual worst-case scenario was something physical from this world, meaning that maybe those intruders that we were thinking about did come in.
Right.
And I wanted her out of sight.
Because think of the chain of events.
Right.
Right? With the alarm going off.
Yeah.
The security company calling.
Right. And the second time it was turned off by itself, the alarm.
Because I got the text
Yes.
that said the alarm went off, and I got the second text saying someone entered the master code, which someone physically has to put that code in. Then we heard Nico. Then we dropped into the kitchen, heard the voices. So then we started thinking, wait a minute, maybe there is someone physically in the home.
Yeah.
Right? So she hid, which was a smart move, by the way. When
Yeah. I did that, and
put her
I
in the
took her
corner.
knife.
if it were
Oh,
Jason,
yeah.
he would have put me right to the door.
I said, fucking go up and check it out.
No,
You
you would have
first.
given me to them.
No. I was ready.
Your money or your wife? Shit, you're making this too easy. Gotta go, Katie. It was some freaky stuff, but we're back and we're going to complete this episode. It's a good episode, very interesting topic.
Yeah, and I'm here too.
Yeah, well, we know. God,
We're not going to touch base with Katie?
no, we are. But I do want to mention that we're replaying the Jackson Square music, the authentic Jackson Square blues. It's going to be at the beginning of the show, as you've heard,
It's like Jackson Square Purple.
during our commercial breaks and to head us out of the episode.
Before we continue on, though, if you don't mind, can I talk about two possible theories as to what may have occurred that night?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Because we know we talked about the combining forces, right, of the voodoo doll and whatever the hell invades your home from time to time.
Yeah, because something does happen. It does happen here.
Lexi and I, on the way home that night, we thought of this elaborate theory, and then I just thought of one, actually, now when you were re-describing it, I'll tell you that one right now. It's, what if it was an actual, like, Lexi-based phenomenon where, like, whatever is attracted to her that is bad or trickery or fucked up or ghosty.
I was thinking that too.
Like, what if it was just trying to fuck with her and it kept upping the anxiety levels of what she was fearing was happening, and then playing with the alarm then, and then putting the voices so we can think there's someone upstairs.
And the knocking. And
Right,
stuff
and the
like that.
knocking. Like, it's like a chain of events that gets you in panic attack mode, which she often gets.
She does.
By the way.
Too. You're right.
Right. And it was like,
So you
it's not just her mind that was doing it. It was like her mind manifested the problem, and the problem got worse, and we actually were seeing it, or something like that.
I just got the chills, man.
That was
Because Lexi is wookie. She's sensitive.
and the drama queen. Yes. Oh, that's a
I would
terrible
never say
combination.
but
I would say that.
she's sensitive.
Honey, you're
to
drama
this.
queen. I love you, but you're a queen.
That's a great theory.
All right, that's
Wow.
fine. I just thought of that now. And then when we thought on the way there, home, was involving that Katie incident you had a few shows ago, you told me about that time thing.
Yes.
Can you re-describe it real quick?
Yeah, so I was in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I was bagging up garbage, standing in front of the fridge. I was tying the bag down, and I saw Katie out of the corner of my eye by the garage door in our hallway. And then Katie opened the door from the garage and walked into the hallway and stood in that exact same spot.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And you're
That's
like,
when I was telling you about my plants were growing.
yeah. And you're like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I just saw you were just here. Like, I just saw you, do this or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like he
Weeper.
looked like somebody had just called and said bad news, like somebody died.
Right. He was.
Are
yeah,
you
he
okay?
looked shocked.
What's the matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She was there before she was there.
Right.
All
and,
that's all he
crazy.
said too. You were just there. I'm like, I know. I just came back.
and there's so many like little theories, but the main one we kind of cooked up was this time thing, like a time
Warp.
lapse or paradox happened,
Yeah.
right? Where either you saw a fraction of what happened, or it happened and she was late to the party, or whatever, right? Like, right? And I was thinking, like, everything that happened 3 nights ago, it can be explained in the same way. Like the knocking, that could have been a knocking we did in the future. You heard in the kitchen by yourselves. You turning off the alarm. So the first time it went off, then you had to turn it off. You had to give the password and everything. I'm not gonna say it. And then it happened again, and it knew already the password because you already said it before.
Yeah, oh man, exactly.
You know, and you just said it already. And we thought we heard voices. Guess what? You go on the damn Alexa, whatever it is, and you hear voices, and you were hearing yourselves talking about whatever when I was in the bathroom.
I'm getting now I'm getting freaked out.
Right, that's the one we
That
thought
is
about
some
on the way
weird
home.
Shit.
Yeah, she begged me to make sure that I tell you on the show.
No, what a good idea. Oh, creepy.
You know, with all of this stuff happening, how was she reacting?
Oh, the rabbit? You know what? I didn't even... I think
Notice?
I forgot she was here because we were in such a...
We didn't use her as our canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, no canary in the coal mine with that one. It was the weirdest vibe down here. It was very strange that night. I don't even remember even seeing her.
I remember
rabbit.
feeling nothing, and then because they were freaking out, and I was just trying to like joke them back into normalcy, and then I got worried when the voices started and the alarm and the voices. Those are two things that got me like, okay, that could be something.
Yeah.
That's when I actually
Crazy.
Fuck. All right, but we gotta move on a little bit.
Cool.
But thank you. Those are great theories. For once, I could honestly say, too bad Dave's not here. Probably never hear me say that again. But just saying.
Did you hear that? He got a ding.
Love you, Dave.
His brain dinged.
Yes.
I wonder what he'd do.
I don't know.
Because either he
the last
exasperates
time?
the situation or he vastly exasperates the situation.
Right. He could heighten it to the nth degree. I don't know. If I'm feeling it, chances are Dave would be on the floor freaking out.
He'll crawl into that cage with the bunny.
Exactly.
Probably that little crawl
He would have
space.
been, through the
Ooh.
block window there, he'd be hiding behind that furniture piece with Lexy. But, Katie,
Hi.
welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
It's been over, God, I don't know, 2 years?
no,
a
it
year and a
hasn't been
half?
that long, I don't think.
Can't-
I mean, since it's been definitely over a year. I just don't know how much more than a year.
maybe since our last New Orleans trip. When we did our own little recording out in New Orleans. When
Oh
we
yeah,
got
that was last time for sure.
It wasn't last summer when we were in the garage.
I don't think so.
Hmm.
But anyway, welcome back.
Thank you.
Been a long time. For any new listeners, that is my wife, Katie Knight. The reason I chose this topic for episode 97 was because we're just coming off of a New Orleans trip for our anniversary. Our 12. Let me see if I get this right. 12 years married, 21 years together.
He remembers.
Did I get that right?
You know, those are the same numbers
Yes.
inverted.
I'm back in bed.
Pretty much.
It is the same
Back in
numbers
bed.
inverted. That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, you got some points.
So
It's like the number 23, right?
So in honor of our New Orleans anniversary trip, I chose a New Orleans topic, New Orleans music. So this is all going to be about murder and voodoo
And
and
Cajun
ghosts and the
pepper.
French Quarter.
And alligator attacks.
I got Hurricane Katrina in here. Everything about New Orleans in honor of our trip. What do you think about
Sounds amazing.
that? See how fucking
Right up
amazing
my
your
alley.
husband is?
Yeah, so amazing.
Great guy. I am.
And also his research assistant too.
No, this is all me.
Oh, this one's all
This one
you.
is all me. I had Jessica Celine working on.
Oh, the other one you told me that
Oh,
was...
I gotta pay her too. Actually, 2 more things I have to do tonight. on the next Patreon episode.
Oh, okay.
The one that...
The fucked up one.
The real fucked up one.
Okay, right.
The one other podcasters won't even touch.
Yeah.
So, so welcome back. How does it feel to be back?
Fantastic.
That's great.
I miss
Okay,
it.
moving on.
Back to the couch you go.
Damn it.
Actually, no, you're sleeping down here.
Fuck no.
Yeah.
No way.
It's like Dawson's Creek.
I found his weak spot.
It's more like Biodome is what it reminds me of. Listeners, check the outtakes. You
Please
know what
do.
we're talking about.
Please do.
I'm picking on Katie. Katie, I'm sorry. I love you.
He's sleeping in the basement.
Have I asked you how's it feel to be back again?
Yes.
Well, tell us something. Jeez, don't just sit there.
Well, I loved New Orleans. I want to go back. We almost moved out there.
Yes.
We could have just sent for the kids, but we had to come back, I guess.
What was your favorite part of New Orleans?
Everything?
Everything.
Yes.
Oh,
I
nice.
can't pick one thing.
How do you say the French?
I am very upset that
here
we
we go.
forgot
What did we
to
forget?
stop at that doggone,
Doggone, she says. You could swear on this episode.
goddamn.
Whoa.
Oh, I thought it was a place called Doggone. That's how much I didn't believe.
I know. I was like, is this a bar we walked past?
Yeah.
Liquor store.
Oh, the liquor store on...
Oh, next time you
Yeah.
go, get me some liquor.
Listen,
on Dickie
let me
Street.
tell you about liquor.
I'm just saying because it's safer than a voodoo doll.
Did we talk about this yet?
No.
Okay.
No.
Can I tell it?
Decatur, right? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's on
So,
Decatur.
I'm just going to say it. So we went to a vampire boutique and we got some fun stuff, for our New Orleans wall. And the person who rung us up was, hey, we have this speakeasy bar. And if you guys are interested, we have it at between 4 and 8. You guys are invited. Just here's the card. Here's the code. This is what you tell the people at the door.
So just like a real speakeasy, you have to know the code, right? Otherwise, they won't let you in.
Right.
So
So we were excited. We were like, yeah. And I didn't feel good that day. So we ended up going back to the room and I went to sleep a little bit. And Jay's like, hey, it's 6 o'clock. I'm like, we got to go. I'm not missing that. I am feeling fine. Even if I was feeling a little weird, I still wanted to go. I wanted to check it out.
Yeah.
So we got up there. It was really cool. You could totally feel like a vampire, vibe.
Yeah.
Velvet
kinda like
couches,
velvet, everything dark
kinda
purple, dark reds.
Yeah. You say you didn't
lots
go.
of mirrors.
No, we did.
And
We did
Oh.
go.
they had some cool decor in there
She
too.
made it sound like she didn't go.
No. We went back to the room. She slept a little bit 'cause she didn't feel good.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
because we had
We woke
gone
up in
the
a
morning.
panic, like, whoa,
Oh,
it's
okay.
6 o'clock.
Got it. Now I'm caught up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was from 4 to 8.
Yeah.
So we went there. We were enjoying it. We're like, oh, okay, what should we get to drink? And we were looking at the menu. She's like, oh, have this one without the absinthe. Or the bartender said it. I was like, no, I'm here. This is kind of geared towards the absinthe. I'm going to have something with the absinthe.
Yeah, from hell.
So
Yeah.
this concoction read rum con.
Yeah, try it again.
You guys got me right in the middle of that word, too.
No,
Keep the mic up.
we're professionals. We know when to interrupt you, ma'am. Continue.
So rum cocktail with a hint of absinthe.
All I heard was cock.
Let me tell you, I had never felt so mellow.
Oh, should.
And I had Jay taste this thing, and it was super strong.
Did he
you
want
would
to
have
murder
thought
someone?
that you would have been on the floor
Yeah, it
with
was,
the way that was strong.
yeah.
And I was just walking down Bourbon. I was like, hey, I hated all these people a minute ago. I was like, hey, how you doing?
That's why they're all so
I
friendly
feel
down there
great.
sometimes.
Because
And she's
everyone's-
like, you're drunk, aren't you? I'm like, no, actually, I'm very coherent, and I'm feeling really good. Very mellow.
So you really like the absinthe. That's.
Yeah.
I think that's what mellowed out the drink was the absinthe.
And I told him, we need to get it.
I think I've only had absinthe like twice. Both times weren't the best.
No,
I'm gonna
I
have-
didn't like the first time. I didn't like the what he had gotten either.
It's like some sort of licorice thing. Which no, I didn't mind it. I
Sambuca.
just didn't.
Sambuca is
This
what
one?
it tastes like. Just like Zambuca. Same
yeah.
thing.
yeah.
But this one, there's no licorice taste.
Well, because it was
It's
swimming in
kinda
rum.
No, it's not. It's not licorice. It's not licorice flavor.
Had to be. No?
It's
Okay.
non-licorice flavor.
Huh.
Like a green syrup. Heightens your everything. I
Yeah.
was so happy.
I know. That's a lot of people took it with their laudanum, right?
And I was on
Yeah.
cloud 9 that day.
So the point, I mean, we were supposed to go and buy a bottle or two of absinthe to bring it home because you can't find it here. You know?
No,
Yeah.
you
Or
can
you'll
get
find
it
some cheap
delivered.
You can get it online.
But $40 for shipping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even if you
fuck
get
that.
an $8.56 bottle, it's a mini one. You still have to pay $40 for shipping.
It comes from like
Bye.
Germany or something.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
really?
It's coming from
But
out
you
of
can't
country.
get it shipped here? I guess I thought it was illegal
You can.
You can if you pay for it.
here.
Yeah. And it is good. And the absinthe, I just had straight absinthe, and they do the whole presentation where, you know, they take your nice absinthe glass, they put a strainer on top of the glass, they put the sugar cube on the strainer.
Yeah.
They let it on
They
fire.
put something on the sugar cube. I forgot what it was, but then they light the sugar cube, it melts into the water.
Yep.
Then
And
they
it fairy
turn on
dances.
the decanter of distilled water.
Yeah.
Old antique decanter, super cool looking. I want to get one.
Does it creak too?
No, no. And it just drips, and it creates these spirits. They call it the fairies of absinthe. And if you put a light up to it, as the
You
decanter,
can see
we
it
got to
dancing.
go there.
as
when
the
we- if we
decanter
go.
water is
Oh.
You know
dripping
what?
into
We're
the
going to take a
absinthe
13-hour
glass.
drive and just go there tomorrow, okay?
Yeah, as the as the decantered water is dripping into the absinthe glass, put a light next to it. You see all these weird things moving around, and it's
Really?
the
Kinda
sugar
like a mist.
interacting with the absinthe, but they call it the fairies.
Yeah.
The absinthe fairies. So it was just really cool, and so yeah. So you like New Orleans?
and
good.
then on top of that, I was talking all mellow.
Really?
And what does this one say? You just like that bartender. What?
the bartender was super cool.
I'm like, okay.
He was this massive dude from the UK.
He was cool. His
Hardly understand anything he said.
his
He was the
accent was
nicest
super
guy.
cool.
But it looked like he could have
Thick
torn
like
me
his
from
cock,
limb
huh?
to limb. But yeah, he was super, super cool.
Yeah.
Nice place, great place. If I knew the name, well, it doesn't have a name,
No.
right? Because it's a speakeasy, so I
But
can't give it a
is
shout out.
on-
Bourbon.
Yes, it's on Bourbon Street.
Everything that's on purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, everything, but- oh, please say that on the mic. Okay.
You can say it. It's okay. No one knows who you are.
We say ridiculous shit here.
What were you going to say?
Except for your friends and family.
I said, let's go to New Orleans. We'll just drive on.
All
Like,
right.
well, he's not on
Talia
summer
wanted to be by
vacation.
herself. Now's her chance.
Are you insane?
$13, kid.
All right.
He's
Anything
have a
else?
drink and come right back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the last 2 days, I've just been working. I have nothing to catch up with you guys.
Yeah. Same here.
Or cats up.
Same here.
Get it?
Well, then let's roll right into the housekeeping here. Find us online,
Right. MySpace.
ChicagoGhostPodcast.com.
MySpace still? My
Kidding,
gosh,
he's
I
kidding.
thought that was
so glad she's
obsolete.
here right now.
He's joking. He's joking.
Good.
It's a joke.
Like AOL. Jeez.
I still remember my handle name.
What was your handle name?
XDRBCX.
Oh, that's
my gosh, I
right.
remember.
Death Rate Vampire Chronicles.
Yes. Oh my
I
God. You
remember.
remember that?
Yes, I
Oh,
do.
yeah. See,
Oh,
he
my
does
God.
pay attention.
Yeah, but not to you.
You have a DRVC tattoo,
Yeah.
don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Tattoo.
The Death Rate Vampire Chronicles. That was a script you were writing.
And he
correct?
was a vampire for a very long time.
Such a very long time. I know. I was so emo. I was genuinely emo.
He
But
was
minus-
trying so hard.
minus the get up though. I never did the get up thing.
Never did. No.
No.
But you tried to win us over. Yeah,
I
really
tried.
a vampire.
I had the black nails a couple times though. I don't know if you remember that. You remember that?
All right. It's like herding cats. Ready?
Yeah. Sorry.
ChicagoGhostPodcast.com. Click on follow. What the fuck? All right.
I was reading her mind.
Can we X that out? Can we edit that?
That's what I was going to do.
I was reading your mind. Like
Oh, that's funny.
ChicagoGhostPodcast.com. Click on follow, and you can get to all our social platforms.
like Friendster.
right
Yeah.
from not Friendster, not Grindr, not Tinder.
Hey, Tinder.
Facebook at Chicago Ghost Podcast on Facebook. Leave us a comment or a review, and we'll read them on the show.
On kettlepot.org.
Twitter and Instagram is at Chicago Ghosts. That's at Chicago Ghosts. I'm actually going to put up pictures of Oscar's voodoo doll, the one that may or may not have caused all the havoc here a few nights ago and stopped the first recording. So make sure to check out Instagram, check out that voodoo doll, leave us some thoughts on it. Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast is on YouTube. That's Supernatural Occurrence Studies on YouTube. While you're there, click subscribe, ring the bell, so you're notified every time we upload new content.
Dong.
Ding, ding.
Oh, God, it hurts. Leave us a review on iTunes.
I love
You're
it.
listening to this podcast probably on your phone right now. Click on review, give us 5 stars, leave us a rating. We'll read your rating on the show. You could let us know what you
Where's
think
my
of the
knife?
cat noises. I don't know. Let me know if I should ever bring my wife back on the show.
Yay, please.
Just leave us love on iTunes. It helps listeners just like you find our little passion project. 872-529-0767.
Oh, Chappaquiddick.
That's
I
Chicago
love that
area
place.
code 872-529-0767. Leave us a text, leave us a voicemail. We'll read them and play them on the show.
Send us a carrier pigeon to P.O. Box.
Who doesn't
852.
like hearing your voice broadcast all around the world? I know I do. Mm-hmm. And join our Patreon. We have the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man level of support on Patreon.
You don't have to raise your hand here.
For only $5 a month. That's just 17 cents a day. 17 cents a day. Listeners have access to ad-free podcast episodes, as well as Patreon-only podcast episodes. That's content that's never been released on our normal podcast feed. You'll also receive a Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast sticker.
My God, you can say just all that out, huh?
A detailed mention on our show and in an episode show notes, your website, social accounts, your business, whatever. And we also have 2 other tiers of support, each offering different benefits. So head on over to patreon.com.
Insurance benefits?
/Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast.
//forward.
And pledge your support for the show. Or just go to chicagoghostpodcast.com, click on follow, then click on the Patreon icon, and it'll take you right to us.
I swear to God, do you ever, say this shit in your sleep?
Yes, he does.
I don't remember anything. I have to write it down every single time.
He says all that.
You must at some point. Also, you can shorten all that. Supernatural Occurrence Studies podcast. I'm already winded. By saying SOSP.
Oscar, let's hear some more of that lovely Jackson Square blues.
All right.
Welcome back to the show.
Hey.
Well,
that was such a funny giggle.
He hates it when we talk to him that one. Yeah, when he's like, "Welcome back," he doesn't want you to say shit.
Hey, he gave me a look like he wanted me to say something. So I was like,
that was
hey.
that was the be quiet look. After 21 years,
you know what?
don't know the be
I
quiet
don't
look.
listen to those looks.
Oh,
You can't listen to looks.
I listen to words.
well,
It's like the sound of silence.
we are back, and we're going to start this show, Katie.
Yay!
All right. Can I get through this? The lights are turned down low.
Where's our candle?
The ceremonial. You fucking.
Wait, we have to light it.
It's what I say every time. You just fucked it up.
It's not a blunt, you know. Yeah.
But
The lights are turned down low. The ceremonial candle is lit. And the drinks are flowing.
That's true.
Let's start this show.
She's showing the charade of our.
Show them behind the curtain here.
Yeah, behind the curtain.
The candle is sitting right in front of you. It's lit. It's the Ouija board candle.
The Wizard of Oz is some fuck in the back.
Oh, God.
Listen.
Did I say let's start the show?
You did, I think. Yeah.
Oscar, what are you drinking, by the way?
I'm drinking. Wait,
That's a vape.
I'm
A vape?
2 drinks.
I do every joke I do it for Katie today. This is a vodka / Coke
Vodka Coke.
That's
nice.
cherry Coke.
and
as we went out.
mead.
Cherry.
Blackberry, right?
Blackberry mead.
Blackberry.
I got blackberry mead as well.
And I have a red, white, and berry.
There you go.
Smirnoff.
Like a nice little hillbilly.
Listen,
She's bigger than you.
don't spit your drink out now.
I'm going to spit my drink on my computer. All right. We got to start. You know, New Orleans,
New Orleans.
it's a fascinating city.
It is.
Drenched in history.
Keep
I
going,
saw that
Katie.
look.
Keep going, Katie.
Did you see that one?
You're doing great, Katie.
Looks like I'm sleeping on the couch tonight.
New Orleans is a fascinating city. A city drenched in history and simmering in a gumbo of voodoo, religion, and black magic.
Blagic.
It's wet and garbage.
In the Vieux Carre, or the French Quarter, the spirits of the dead are always around. And the relationship between the living and the supernatural is an intimate one. In New Orleans, ghosts are cared for, always have been, either intentionally or unintentionally. The constant flow of tourists in the French Quarter from all corners of the world, at any time of the day or night, provides an unintended, steady flow of frenetic energy for hungry spirits to feed off, to charge their batteries, so to speak. And there's about a dozen or so tour companies operating in the French Quarter, offering ghost enthusiasts what they promise will be the very best, the most scary, up-close and personal experience with ghosts, vampires, and voodoo that money can buy. During these tours, infamous locations are visited, and ghosts are called out by name, their stories told, countless times a day. And most importantly, tour patrons hope to experience these spectral New Orleanians. And tour guests want to understand their past deeds, good or bad.
Oh, they want to get drunk.
Once again, feeding the spirits of the quarter, only intentionally this time. And in New Orleans, physically, the dead are never far, as the dead are buried above ground because the water levels are too high in New Orleans to bury our loved ones 6 feet under. So here you have, in the middle of a bustling city, huge, old cemeteries filled with above-ground crypts, designed in the classic, Gothic, and Baroque architectural styles, reminding all to slow it down and take care, because death is just a wrong decision or one too many shrimp po' boys away. You used to be able to tour these cemeteries all on your own, like St. Louis Cemetery, number 1. And tons of people did, all the time.
You can't?
Not anymore. But alas, the Roman Catholic Archdiocese and the city of New Orleans together have barred tourists from entering their cemeteries, unless part of an official tour group, or if you have official business with the cemetery, like if your family is buried there, or if you're a scholar doing genealogical research. That's it. And it's probably a good thing. New Orleans cemeteries have seen a dramatic drop in the living flitting about its crypts, hoping to catch a glimpse of the paranormal, or to have a wish granted by Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau. Good decision for curbing vandalism and nefarious behavior. Now, there's countless instances of vandalism and fiendish activity that have happened in New Orleans cemeteries over the years. Muggings, stabbings, the opening and destruction of crypts, and even camping. People actually camp out or tried to in the past. But the example of attempted New Orleans cemetery desecration that I wanted to mention happened in 1982. After performing a concert near the French Quarter, none other than the Misfits, my absolute favorite punk band, and about 18 concert-goers went to St. Louis Cemetery number 2 to locate and apparently open Marie Laveau's crypt, which is the wrong cemetery, by the way. She's buried in St. Louis number 1. But nevertheless, the Misfits and their entourage were caught stomping around St. Louis number 2, hunting for Laveau's final resting place. Luckily, all were stopped before anything bad could happen. And man, I could just imagine those 1982 Deep South cops encountering the Misfits in full corpse paint and devil lock in one of their cemeteries.
Well, they probably wouldn't have recognized them as the Misfits, probably.
Probably not. Just,
cops were like, damn,
could you imagine what they looked like, though?
Yeah.
At night with 18 punks in mohawks, chains, and leather. What a sight that must have been. Ultimately, the Misfits spent the night in jail and forfeited their $75 bond and opted out of appearing in court the next day so they could move on to Florida to perform a concert. A funny story, luckily nothing terrible happened, but incidents like this is the reason New Orleans locked their cemeteries down.
Well, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Because when I went there, I was able to walk. I walked in there, like freely.
Yeah. No, it's fairly recent. After Katrina.
Yeah.
It happened shortly after Katrina.
Yeah, I went there before.
And all this locking down the cemetery, again, good for curbing vandalism, but bad for hungry cemetery spirits. And of course, in keeping in theme with how spirits are fed and cared for in New Orleans, the thing that the Big Easy is most famous for, their very own special type of voodoo, Louisiana Voodoo, or New Orleans Voodoo, which I classify as spirit feeding level mega. Now, As far back as 1719, when slaves from Africa's western slave coast were brought to Louisiana, slave culture and the predominant Catholic culture in New Orleans mixed. Now, New Orleans' history with voodoo is incredibly complex. So for this episode, I'm going to try and simplify it a bit. These slaves, the people stolen from the slave coast of Africa and brought to Louisiana, the Fon people, the Bambara, the Mandinga, the Wolof, and the Yoruba people, among others, brought with them their cultural practices, language, and spiritual beliefs rooted in spirit and ancestor worship, as well as their own knowledge of herbs, poisons, and the ritual creation of charms and amulets. Now, unlike the Upper South and other parts of British colonial America, where slave families were broken apart and sent to different plantations, in Louisiana, slave families were typically kept together, resulting in cultures, languages, and religious practices staying intact, being practiced, and continued on here in the New World, and eventually thriving up until present day. And in the late 1740s and 50s, when escaped slaves ran to the bayous of Louisiana, there they encountered the Chitimacha tribe, the most powerful native tribe at the time, and slave beliefs and practices mixed with native beliefs as well.
Chitimacha cookies, though, very good.
Yummy. But it's all this mishmash of beliefs, the sub-Saharan voodoo, Catholicism, and the native practices that came together to form that very unique type of voodoo. Again, what's called Louisiana voodoo or New Orleans voodoo. Now, New Orleans voodoo is different from other forms of voodoo, like Haitian voodoo and Southern voodoo. You see, New Orleans voodoo emphasizes the use of gris-gris and voodoo kings and queens. New Orleans voodoo also incorporates hoodoo, occult paraphernalia, Catholic symbols, and something called Le Grand Zombie, and that's zombie with an I. Now, when I mention gris-gris, I'm talking about a little cloth bag, usually made out of red flannel, leather, or chamois. Or a gris-gris could be an amulet, anyway, both of which could contain a mixture of minerals, roots, herbs, coins, little messages written on paper, and even graveyard dust, graveyard dirt. Now, gris-gris can either help or hurt someone depending on the ingredients and the intent of the gris-gris practitioner, the one who made the gris-gris. And no matter what you put in the gris-gris, it has to be more than 3 items and no more than 13 items. And the total number of items must always be odd. Some voodoo shit. I don't know why. That's the way it is. So that's one thing. The New Orleans voodoo really emphasizes the use of gris-gris for positive or ill, depending on the practitioner's intent. New Orleans is also the only system of voodoo to recognize voodoo kings and queens. The most famous voodoo queen, or mambo, by far, was Marie Katheryn Laveau. Now, Marie Laveau rose to fame in New Orleans during the later half of the 19th century, where her reputation as a powerful voodoo priestess grew with leaps and bounds. Marie Laveau was constantly being sought out by the rich and the poor to use her voodoo skills for good and ill. Make someone fall in love, help ensure the delivery of a healthy baby, good health, good fortune, stuff like that.
Make someone dance to death.
Dance them to death. Mm-hmm. Sometimes, though, Laveau would be hired to exact revenge for some slight or to punish people for some transgression. It's said that the mere mention that Marie Laveau had, quote-unquote, worked someone would be enough to cause that person to collapse, both physically and emotionally, often followed by the death of that person. And a number of 19th century sources say that Marie Laveau's voodoo always worked. And Laveau knew things, secret things, about the people of New Orleans, things that no outsider should know. Was this further proof of Marie Laveau's supernatural voodoo powers? Or was it because Marie Laveau owned a popular hairstyling studio in the French Quarter and would quietly listen to gossip being told in the parlor while she was cutting New Orleanians' hair, and then use that hush gossip to her advantage. Truthfully, no one knows for sure whether or not Marie Laveau was New Orleans' most powerful voodoo queen or if she was a charlatan. Depends on what you believe.
Or created the very first bugging device.
Right. She was the first bugging device. Exactly. Yeah. The one thing that cannot be disputed, however, is that Marie Laveau was both respected and feared in New Orleans up until her death in 1881. Today, Marie Laveau can be found in a large off-white crypt in New Orleans' oldest cemetery, St. Louis Cemetery No. 1, which first opens its gates in 1789. Go ahead.
No, I was going to make another joke.
Okay.
I was going to say off-color. It's more like eggshell white. But, you know.
That's where she's buried, in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Now, tourists, occultists, and fans of voodoo leave offerings of candles, paper flowers, small statues, beads, and other small totems outside Marie Laveau's tomb. And there's a strange tradition associated with her tomb. It's said that if you mark 3 X's on her tomb, then spin in a circle 3 times while shouting out a wish, then rapping on her tomb, your wish will come true. And when your wish comes true, you're to return to her tomb, circle your 3 X's, and leave a small offering. And when I seen her tomb, there were a lot of circled X's on her tomb. Apparently, Marie Laveau was so powerful, she could work her voodoo from beyond the grave, if you believe that sort of thing. Now, again, another difference with New Orleans voodoo is something called hoodoo. Now, hoodoo is the borrowing of material from European and African folk magic and ancestor worship, as well as strong elements of Christian and Jewish mysticism, such as hoodoo's use of various seals and sigils. In fact, for many New Orleans voodoo practitioners, our Bible, the Christian Bible itself, is considered a talisman in and of itself, as well as a primary source for magical lore in the form of psalms and saints.
Could that have been a good reference to the movie Skeleton Key? Did they use hoodoo in the movie Skeleton Key?
I remember the skeleton.
Hudson.
Kate Hudson, right. Yeah, she was. It was definitely voodoo. That was New Orleans voodoo.
Hoodoo? I thought it was hoodoo.
I don't think so. I don't remember any Christian or Catholic or Jewish symbols. Or
Well, a lot of ancestors, they were bringing their ancestors from body to body so they could keep their youth.
I definitely think it was some sort of New Orleans voodoo.
They kept their youth by body swapping into tourist bodies, right?
Yeah, and I think I remember Grigri, those bags in that movie.
Right. Good movie, check it out.
Not necessarily hoodoo, though. Now, going on hoodoo, as far as the unique incorporation of Catholicism into New Orleans voodoo, another differentiator. Because Catholicism was the dominant religion in New Orleans during the time of slavery, voodoo deities were infused with Catholic saints, believe it or not. Take, for example, Legba, the voodoo god who controls the gates of the spirit world. Well, in New Orleans voodoo, Legba became St. Peter, heaven's gatekeeper. Another thing that is unique to New Orleans voodoo is something called Le Grand Zombie, or Dembala Weedoo.
Dembala what?
Dembala Weedoo. Le Grand Zombie is the major serpent deity worshipped among New Orleans voodooists. In New Orleans voodoo, snakes aren't considered evil like in the story of Adam and Eve. Instead, snakes are viewed as holders of intuitive knowledge that can't be spoken. Women often dance with snakes during New Orleans voodoo ceremonies to show the spiritual balance between the genders. It's believed that the word zombie, again that's Z-O-M-B-I, in Le Grand Zombie, came from a pet snake voodoo queen Marie Laveau kept at the foot of her bed, or under her bed, in a box as a pet.
Or under the foot of her bed.
Right. Which she would bring out and dance with during her voodoo ceremonies on the banks of Bayou St. John.
Is it weird that I'm picturing Salma Hayek in that From Dusk Till Dawn scene?
That's kind of what, not that seductive, but same point there.
Well, that's my mind.
This is really cool when we were there. So today, voodoo tradition, it's alive and well in New Orleans today. During me and Katie's visit to New Orleans,
Katie and
I stopped and spoke with an artist in Jackson Square, a local, a middle-aged white woman. And she told me that less than 2 weeks before Hurricane Barry was set to hit New Orleans, this was supposedly a big hurricane and New Orleans was directly in its sights. Less than 2 weeks before Barry was supposed to hit, she attended a public voodoo ceremony held in her neighborhood of Bywater. The ceremony's purpose was to protect New Orleans from another devastating hurricane, like Katrina. And you know what? Barry never hit New Orleans, despite what the news ensured would be a direct hit. And I remember Barry's coverage clearly because I was watching to see if I should cancel our trip or not.
Yeah.
They held this voodoo ceremony.
We made fun of the name Barry, remember?
We did.
Yeah.
And sure enough, Barry didn't hit, so I don't know. So voodoo is alive and well, and apparently, with the Barry thing, working in New Orleans. And I swear to God, you could feel it in the air late at night when you're walking through the French Quarter or the Vieux Carre. Spirits lurk around every corner and peer out of every window, watching as you innocently stroll by, clutching a Pim's cup in one hand and your lover's sweaty hand in the other.
Ew.
Countless gas lanterns accent ancient, haunted buildings in a flickering glow. The cobblestone sidewalks, the old musty smells, the sound of wailing blues pouring out of Bourbon Street bars, not to mention the voodoo shops and voodoo temples that dot the French Quarter.
And blue cheese.
Like the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, once located at 828 North Rampart Street, a real voodoo temple, not one of the tourist trap voodoo shops like Reverend Zombies, but the real deal. In fact, the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, which was run by priestess Miriam Chamani, an iconic figure in New Orleans, in the New Orleans spiritual scene since the early 90s, and who blessed the marriage of Nicolas Cage and Lisa Marie Presley, this voodoo temple is where tonight's gruesome story takes place, in an apartment directly above it. And all at once, the sights, the smells, the sounds, all culminate into an overwhelming feeling of otherworldliness. You're in an old place, a historic place, a haunted place, and you're alone. Suddenly ghosts, the Rougarou, the Axeman, and vampires are all very real. Let's quicken our steps and get back to the hotel, back to safety. Remember, New Orleans takes care of its spirits. But what happens when the spirits of New Orleans aren't being taken care of, when they aren't being fed? Now, tonight's tale of murder and mayhem takes place in the French Quarter, the Vieux Carre. The major crime scene, as I said, takes place above the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, formerly at 828 North Rampart Street. Our story takes place during and after the devastating Hurricane Katrina, the costliest, most damaging storm in U.S. history. Tonight's topic is easily the most gruesome, yet least talked about murder in New Orleans history. And that says a lot for a city rife with crime and murder. But before we get into the crime, the heinous murder-suicide of Addie Hall and Zack Bowen, let's first take a look at Hurricane Katrina and what she did to New Orleans. Because to some people, this really matters in this story. Now, Hurricane Katrina made landfall off the coast of Louisiana on August 29, 2005. Katrina initially formed as a tropical depression in Caribbean waters near the Bahamas on August 23, 2005. She officially reached hurricane status 2 days later when she passed over southeastern Miami as a Category 1 storm. Katrina blew through Miami at 80 miles an hour and killed 2 people. She then weakened to a tropical storm. However, Hurricane Katrina then crossed back into the Gulf of Mexico, where she quickly regained strength and hurricane status. On August 27, 2005, she grew to a Category 3 hurricane, and at her largest, Katrina was so wide, her diameter stretched across the entire Gulf of Mexico. Then, on August 29, 2005, Hurricane Katrina made landfall in Louisiana as a Category 3 hurricane, with upwards of 120-mile-per-hour winds and torrential rain. To say Hurricane Katrina caused disruption in Louisiana and New Orleans would be the understatement of the century. Because of the unusually high winds and torrential rain, New Orleans, which is mostly below sea level and surrounded by levees that hold back the waters of the powerful Mississippi River, Lake Pontchartrain, and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico. New Orleans was flooded because 50 of these levees failed during Hurricane Katrina, allowing what's called a storm surge to completely decimate New Orleans. By September 2nd, 2005, 80% of New Orleans was underwater. In some areas, floodwaters reached 20 feet. Because of the resulting loss of life and property damage, Hurricane Katrina is considered one of the worst storms in U.S. history. An estimated 1,833 people died as a direct result of Katrina, which also cost an estimated $108 billion in property damage.
Wow.
Of the 1,833 people that died during the hurricane, 40% of deaths were caused by drowning, 25% were caused by injury and trauma, and 11% were caused by heart conditions. And approximately 705 people are still considered missing to this day. Now, I remember watching Katrina on the news. I was in New Orleans as it was forming over the Gulf.
Yes, you were.
We were talking to people in the quarter. Hey, this hurricane's coming. Are you guys evacuating? We're not evacuating. They always say it's going to happen. It never happens. We're staying. Well, of course, Katrina hit. I'll never forget. I came home from school. I was in college. Came home from school, and I was watching CNN. Yes, listeners, I watch CNN. Right, exactly. Go ahead, insert joke here. And I remember seeing this poor old black guy. He was telling the story how him and his wife evacuated to the roof of his home, and his fucking home split in half due to the rushing floodwaters.
Yeah.
And his wife got sucked into the ravine that formed in his home, in the roof of his house. His whole home split in half.
Yeah.
He was holding on to her, he was telling the story. He's holding her. Eventually, water got too strong, ripped her out of his hands, she died.
Yeah. And
I knew right then, because I love New Orleans. I had been there a handful of times prior to Katrina, right? Yeah. And I was there as it was forming. So I knew we got to do something, right? I want to help. I love this city. I feel like it's my city. So we organized the, what do we call it? The
Hurricane Katrina Relief.
Yeah, the Chicago Comedy Hurricane Katrina Relief Effort what we called it. Chicago Comedy Hurricane Katrina Relief Effort, where myself, Dave Black, another woman that we were working with, organized this huge event where we had bands playing, we had comedians performing, we had some ex-Bears players, Chicago Bears players come to sign autographs. The news were there, the newspapers were there. We had popcorn machines and food vendors, and we also had an organized drop-off station where people could come and donate their goods.
Food for pets and people. It was
medicine. It was beautiful. Mm-hmm. The amount of support we had. U-Haul donated like an 18 or 20-foot truck, whatever, one of the big ones. Mm-hmm. Just donated it to us. So we loaded that fucking truck up, and we drove right down. And this is less than a week, I think. No, about a week. Yeah. Week and a half after Katrina hit. Yeah. And we didn't know what we were getting into. But myself, Dave Black, my mom, and her boyfriend at the time jumped in the truck, drove it straight down to Louisiana, not knowing what the fuck we were going to encounter. We were scared because they're talking about looting.
I was wondering, hope they're going to be safe. I hope they're okay. I had to keep texting.
Because they were talking about relief efforts getting overrun with people who were hungry, injured. Right. And a lot of the story was hype, too. There's so much hype that came out of Katrina. Right. We could have an episode just on that alone. But we eventually dropped off all our goods. But I'll tell you, going to New Orleans, we just came back from New Orleans, driving down I-10 takes you right into the French Quarter, goes right around New Orleans. Busy as fuck, always traffic. But when we were there, all the lights were out. There wasn't a soul on 10 except for us, emergency vehicles, and military vehicles. Yeah. We tried to get off an exit to get down towards the French Quarter. I had a spot in mind, a viaduct area off of Esplanade, actually, or around Esplanade, where I wanted to, because I always saw homeless there, so I wanted to go there. That was my goal. But trying to get off the expressway at one point, get off 10, we were stopped by armed military personnel. And I'll never forget this little black kid, shorter than me, and I'm short, in full military gear, holding a rifle, a machine gun.
Yeah.
That was big. It looked bigger than he was. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was there. What are you doing? Why are you here? But I'm like, oh, fuck, we got all this stuff. He's like, you can't get off here. So we had to go back, circle around. We eventually got to, I think it was Slidell, where we delivered our goods to a church because we could not get off into the French Quarter, right, where I wanted to go. It was very dangerous. Lights were out. A lot of police up and quit, they said, because shit got so bad. The Superdome, the top was ripped off the covering of the roof of the Superdome was completely like blown in the wind. It was insane. But it was so dark, quiet, spooky, military vehicles, our vehicle, and emergency, armed
it looked
military.
otherworldly.
It was like you're in a third world.
Like a post-apocalyptic like country or something. Version.
Exactly. Yeah. But, damn it.
Parallel universe, because, when you see everything happening and you're in a different parallel universe, it's completely still. Nobody's there,
Yeah.
That's super creepy.
It was very strange. And people from New Orleans, from that area, evacuated north. So once we dropped our goods, obviously we weren't staying anywhere in the French Quarter because it was shut down. We couldn't get off the highway. We had to go way up to the top of Mississippi to find a hotel room.
Really?
Hours away.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because everyone else evacuated. All the hotels were taken up.
Yep.
And I remember the hotel room we did find, the bathroom door was hanging off its hinges. We had towels that had blood on the towels. Do you remember this?
It was pizza sauce, actually.
There were blood on the towels.
Hopefully.
We came into the room, and there was a dude sleeping in our bed.
What?
Some homeless-looking dude. That's
he
right.
looked at you like, hey, how you doing?
That's right. And it was very surreal experience. But we did it. We delivered our goods. We got back safe.
There's many things out there, documentaries and other movies or film. There's a lot of footage you can see. But a fun movie that it's not a good movie, but have you seen Bad Lieutenant, the remake with Nicolas Cage?
I don't think so.
Okay, and he's a bad lieutenant, and in a post-Katrina, recently post-Katrina.
Oh wow!
New Orleans thing, and then they shot some stuff in there. It looks like everyone's trying to come back to their lives. This is after. This is not that period where there's military trucks, but it's like after that.
Yeah.
Where like it's still a city reconstructing itself.
Absolutely.
And stuff like that, and then the movie's about him and other people taking advantage of that disaster to do crimes. And stuff like that. That's what the movie.
Well, that stems directly from all the rumors that were swirling around.
Yes.
During Katrina and right after Katrina, what
True
was
Detective
happening?
Also had a little byline about that. Yeah.
It was crazy. I mean, we went there, delivered our goods. Everything was great. Went back a couple years later. There was still the French Quarter is surrounded by area that's not good. It's not good area. You remember, right?
Yes.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
The French Quarter was up and running ASAP.
Yeah.
And you'll hear from the story that I'm going to tell. But all the surrounding areas, we went back a couple years later, there were still boats in the middle of the fucking streets of these neighborhoods that were never cleared because no one gave a fuck because it wasn't bringing in tourist money. Right,
it wasn't.
And I think there's still homes that are abandoned. There's still homes that are being worked on and to this day.
Squatter's delight.
Crazy, just crazy. And here's the thing, a ton of controversy surrounded Hurricane Katrina as far as the declaration to evacuate prior to the storm's landfall. Many believe that then Mayor of New Orleans, Ray Nagin, called for mandatory evacuation too late, that he knew the risk of devastation, but he waited. And he's the cause of all the deaths due to Katrina. 48 hours before Katrina hit, people were ordered to evacuate. This left New Orleans residents with only 2 days to comprehend what was to happen, process the information, make plans, then evacuate. And here's where Ray Nagin came under fire. Not enough time given for people to leave.
Yeah, because you can't just, literally can't drop everything and go where, right?
Right. And a lot of New Orleans is poor. So these people didn't have means to evacuate that quickly.
Yeah.
But, Ray Nagin doing the wrong thing, I don't know if it's necessarily true. Because like I said, I could tell you, when I was in New Orleans as Katrina was forming over the Gulf, residents of New Orleans, they didn't want to evacuate. Everyone I talked to said no. They believed nothing would happen, as hurricanes are a part of living in Louisiana. And none of the big ones ever hit. Since 1759, Louisiana has been hit by over 170 hurricanes. And very few have caused anyone to have to truly evacuate. So the general attitude I encountered anyway was, hey, we're going to be all right. Nothing to worry about. Of course, Katrina did hit. But luckily, a lot of people did evacuate. Otherwise, the death toll would have been much, much higher. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, the population of New Orleans fell from a pre-Katrina high of 484,674 to about 230,172 people post-Katrina.
Gesundheit.
That's more than half the people of New Orleans leaving because of the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
That's a ton of people. And that's exactly where the victims in our story find themselves, in a near totally evacuated French Quarter in the midst of Hurricane Katrina. Understand that at least 50% of New Orleans is below sea level, but the French Quarter sits the highest level out of all New Orleans at about 10 feet above sea level. So the flooding wasn't bad in the French Quarter, but nearly everyone evacuated just in case. There were rampant power outages, a little bit of flooding, and some reports say looting in the Vieux Carre. But our people, the people of tonight's topic, Zack Bowen and Addie Hall, held fast, held out, and were two of the very few people who remained in the French Quarter with their home and belongings while Katrina raged. Zack and Addie became quite famous the world over, making front-page news as the young, good-looking, brave Katrina couple, tough and steadfast, refusing to evacuate a city, their city, as it crumbled around them. I'll leave pictures of news photos of Zack and Addie in the episode show notes so you can see this good-looking couple for yourself. Stories say that Zack and Addie would mix drinks in a blender, power stolen from nearby homes and businesses via an extension cord, and would hand the drinks out to relief workers and other New Orleanians who stayed behind. Other stories say that Addie Hall was known to flash her breasts at emergency responders and relief workers in an effort to draw attention and thereby safety to their part of the French Quarter. Like, hey, go check out the girl flashing her tits over, and it would ultimately bring what remaining traffic was there around to keep it safe. Running around... Sorry. In the beginning, Zack and Addie had fun and made the best out of a terrible situation. They were kind of like the king and queen of New Orleans for a short while. An empty city all to mostly themselves. What a feeling that must have been. Running around a virtually empty city, no bills, no jobs, no cares, drinking all day and night, making do with whatever they had, like a big-ass campout. But unfortunately, the party wouldn't last. You see, at this time, even though it might have been fun when not sober, the reality was New Orleans was dark, deserted, and it had this lingering stench of what some holdouts described as death. The problem was the evacuation of New Orleans left a city teeming with spirits, but devoid of human life. So whoever was left was like prey to the spirits, spirits that need people to feed on, to pay attention to them, to worship them. For a young, vibrant couple like Zack and Addie, they must have been like beacons to these hungry spirits. And here, people say, is where things went terribly, terribly wrong. Before we get into the crime, let's take a look at who Zack Bowen and Addie Hall were as people. We'll start with Zack. Overall, friends and family say that Zack was the average American guy. Originally from Los Angeles, he stood around 6'10", big guy.
Whoa, yeah.
With blondish brown hair, a constant tan, and dimples that women loved. He didn't cause trouble. He didn't make people uneasy or afraid. He was friendly, had a lot of friends actually. And he was an artist, wrote poetry, played guitar. And overall, people liked him. Looking into his past, Zack had none of the boxes checked off that would signal he would later be capable of such a terrible crime. No head injuries, no sexual abuse, hurting animals, setting fires, nothing. When Zack was 18 years old, he married a 28-year-old stripper named Lana Shupak. Good for him. And together they had 2 children. In order to support his new family, Zack enlists in the U.S. Army pre-9/11. But in 2003, at the beginning of the Iraq War, he shipped off to be part of the first wave attack on Baghdad. And while in Iraq, he spent time at the notorious Abu Ghraib prison, known for egregious human rights violations perpetrated onto Middle Eastern prisoners of war. Yeah. He also spent time in war-torn Kosovo. And ultimately, Zack rose to the rank of sergeant. During his time in the Army, Zack saw a lot of fighting and death, and it messed him up. Specifically, when a friend he made, an 18-year-old female Iraqi, along with her entire family, was killed in a bombing. After the bombing, Zack wanted out of the military, so he began purposely failing his physicals in order to get discharged. Well, Zack got what he wanted, and he was released from the U.S. Army under a general discharge in late 2004. Now, and this is important, because he received that discharge, Zack lost his insurance benefits and access to any psychological assistance, too. Assistance he desperately needed to help him assimilate back into civilian life and deal with any PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder he might have from the war. So Zack returns home, but unfortunately, just a few months later, he and his wife Lana separate. With barely anything to his name, no family, and the general discharge hanging over his head, Zack heads to the French Quarter in New Orleans and has to work shitty bar jobs to get by. And there, just 2 weeks before Hurricane Katrina struck, while he was a bartender at a place called Buffa's, Zack met another young woman, attractive bartender and an exotic dancer, who very much liked to party, a young woman named Addie Hall. Zack and Addie strike up a relationship fast, having found kindred spirits in one another. But the relationship was tumultuous, to say the least. For Zack and Addie, every day was work, drink, party, and fight. Sleep till noon, then wash, rinse, and repeat. The relationship was probably a fun one, but a turbulent one, too. Then Hurricane Katrina hits in August 2005. There's darkness, destruction, desolation, and fetid smells all around Zack. Probably not too far from what he experienced in Baghdad, or Kosovo, or at Abu Ghraib. What does that do to a man traumatized by war, and with no means of psychological support? Now, as for Addie Hall, she's originally from Durham, North Carolina. And from what I read, it seems she had it pretty rough growing up. Apparently, she was repeatedly molested as a child, and she had many abusive relationships as an adult. She drank, she drugged. Both Addie and Zack loved cocaine. And one article said that Addie was likely bipolar and could have been suffering her own PTSD due to her unfortunate childhood experiences. As I mentioned, Addie was a fellow bartender and an exotic dancer who shared a lot of personality traits with Zack. Again, the drinking, the partying, cocaine, carefree attitude.
Dimples.
No, I don't know. I can't really tell from the picture. Maybe little dimples from the pictures.
No, I meant his dimples, but...
But as most stories about Addie state, she could be a mean drunk and like to lay into her boyfriend Zack when she was under the influence. Then, when New Orleans lights finally came back on and their refugee party was over, and life and responsibilities came crashing back down,
right.
That's when Addie began to drink even more, and her anger increased. Her target again was usually Zack. Now, on October 5th, 2006, Zack and Addie had their final drunken fight. Stories change depending on what you read regarding the cause of the fight. One story says it was Zack's finally having enough of Addie's constant abuse that finally tipped the scales. Another story says that Zack was angry with Addie because she took him off a lease they shared, because Addie could now kick him out of their apartment at any time, and there'd be nothing he could do about it. Yet another story claims that Addie tried to have Zack removed from the lease, but their landlord refused, telling both Zack and Addie to try to stick it together and work it out. Eesh, that was bad advice. Either way, unfortunately, depending which story you believe, the end result is the same. That night, October 5th, 2006, Zack Bowen strangled Addie to death. And what he did after that shocked not only New Orleans, but the world. Now here we have to flash forward a little bit. On October 18th, 2006, around 8:30 p.m., Zack Bowen, after drinking and partying all day, went to the roof of the Omni Royal Orleans Hotel in the French Quarter. Security cameras captured Zack walk to the hotel, the roof ledge, look over, then walk away. He did this again and again, until finally, after having one last drink, Zack walked to the edge of the roof and threw himself over. Zack fell 5 stories and landed on the hotel's parking garage roof. His body was terribly mangled from the fall, and he likely died instantly. Now, when detectives arrived on scene at the Omni Royal, they quickly realized Zack's death wasn't a homicide, and it definitely wasn't a typical suicide. You see, detectives found a Ziploc baggie in Zack's pocket. The bag contained a 5-page suicide note, as well as his army dog tags and a set of keys. Zack Bowen's suicide note read, in part, quote, "This is not accidental. I had to take my own life to pay for the one I took." End quote. The note went on, quote, "If you send a patrol to 826 North Rampart, you will find the dismembered corpse of my girlfriend Addie in the oven, on the stove, and in the fridge, along with full documentation on the both of us and a full signed confession from myself. The keys in my right front pocket are for the gates. Call Leo Watermeyer to let you in. Zack Bowen." End quote. Now, Leo Watermeyer was the owner of the building that contained the Voodoo Spiritual Temple and the apartments directly above, one of them being Zack and Addie's apartment.
Right.
Later, autopsy revealed that Zack had burned himself 28 times with either cigarettes or cigars, one burn for each year he was alive, according to his suicide note. Kind of like self-punishment for the crime he committed and the failure he felt he was.
Well, they're all as recent, you know?
Oh,
like
yeah.
They do back-to-back.
Yeah. Now, Zack wrote in his suicide note that he felt like a failure in school, having never graduated high school, a failure at jobs, the army, marriage, fatherhood, morals, and a failure at love. It's incredibly sad, and this was obviously a deeply disturbed man. Or was he? Some people claim Zack wasn't disturbed at all, that he was something else at the time of Addie's murder. More on that in a bit. When police arrived at Zack and Addie's apartment, as per Zack's suicide note, upon entering, they found the apartment was frigid, 60 degrees, like a meat locker, as one detective described it, as the air conditioning was left on full blast. And there were messages from Zack spray-painted on the walls. Messages like, "I love her," and "I'm a failure." Other messages read, "Please call my wife. I'm a total failure." Yet another message read, "Look in the oven." And a spray-painted message above Zack and Addie's bed read, quote, "Please help me stop the pain," end quote.
You said spray-painted?
Spray-painted, yeah.
You probably could tell the order of those messages.
You think?
Right, because he probably wrote the look in the oven one last. Right? So when they come in, preparing for a suicide, right? You probably could see the wife one being in the middle there, and the first one being like, what was the one you said about the girlfriend? About Addie?
Well, "Please call my wife.
That's another one.
Tell her I love her."
Tell her I love her, maybe. That one.
That was to his original wife.
Then I'm sorry. Probably the self-deprecating came first, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a failure. You know,
Absolutely.
probably tell the order of that.
If there's one thing, he was definitely remorseful for what he did. I mean, his suicide note said, "I have to take my life to pay for the one I took."
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a remorseful guy. But now, police also found Zack's diary with entries that detailed the killing of Addie Hall. One diary entry read, quote, "Halfway through the task, I stopped and thought about what I was doing. The decision to halt the first idea and move to Plan B, the crime scene you are now in, came after a while. I scared myself, not only by the action of calmly strangling the woman I've loved for 1.5 years, but my entire lack of remorse. I've known forever how horrible a person I am. Ask anyone." End quote. Another entry talked about the fight the couple had on the night of October 5th, and how Zack slowly and calmly strangled Addie to death, and how he slept next to her corpse for days, and even had sex with it multiple times. Necrophilia. The diary went on to detail how Zack chopped Addie up in their bathtub using a hacksaw and a knife. And that wasn't even the worst of it. Worst of all is what investigators found Zack had done to Addie. Detectives noticed that in the couple's kitchen, there was spray paint on the oven door, like a signal to police to look in here. When police opened the oven, inside, they found a large silver foil pan, like what you might prepare a turkey in on Thanksgiving. Inside the foil pan, investigators found human remains, cooked human remains, of what appeared to be a femur or a thigh. They were badly burnt. It was hard to tell, but definitely body parts. Addie's body parts.
Like the shape of them?
Yeah.
Right?
Inside the couple's refrigerator, in a black plastic garbage bag, investigators found Addie's torso. And the most horrendous thing, on top of the stove, sat 2 silver pots with covers on them. When police removed the cover from one pot, they discovered Addie's hands and feet. In the other pot was Addie's severed head. All had been cooked to the point that her flesh was melting and falling off of the bones, and the skin falling from Addie's face. One story I read claimed that there were seasonings applied to some of Addie's cooked remains. Although I don't think this is true. According to autopsy, there was no human flesh found in Zack, meaning he never ate parts of Addie. Zero proof of cannibalism. I don't think Zack cooked Addie to eat her. I think he was looking for a more convenient way to dispose of her. Render her down, then throw her away, with the trash maybe? Pour liquefied remains in a French Quarter sewer? Who knows? But I don't think cannibalism was his goal.
Do a Sweeney Todd, you know?
Right. You guys with me?
She's a girl.
Yeah, I'm a girl.
Katie, you've been pretty quiet this whole time. Talk while I pour a shot.
Well, first of all, she doesn't want to sleep on the couch for real. First of all. Secondly, she doesn't want to kick you to the couch. So thirdly...
I'm kind of tired now.
Yeah, I could tell. No, it's the severity of the tone thing, you know, of the story.
Yeah, and we were letting you talk.
It is brutal. It is a brutal story. You remember we visited this place.
Yes.
On a tour.
The heaviness.
I do have another story when I actually went to the Voodoo Spiritual Temple, because I'm a New Orleans rat, and I met Priestess Miriam and what happened to me, but I'm not ready to get there yet. Now here's where it gets interesting. Remember when I detailed Zack Bowen as a person? The all-American guy, loved by all, lots of friends, all that?
6'1".
And that Zack had zero signs or anything from his past that would reveal his murderous, demonic side?
Mm-hmm.
Remember that? So what happened? What went wrong? What made Zack snap in such a horrendous way? We'll never truly know what was going on inside Zack's head. What really drove him to commit such a heinous crime? To me, it's likely he suffered from intense depression and PTSD, both exasperated to the nth degree by habitual alcohol and drug use and being right smack in the middle of Hurricane Katrina ravaged New Orleans. The sights, the sounds, the desolation, the darkness. That's likely the cause, and it's so incredibly sad and unfortunate. But what some people believe is that the spirits of New Orleans, who are usually fed by the tourists, the ghost tours, the voodoo rituals, the constant frenetic energy of a bustling French Quarter. Because of Hurricane Katrina and the evacuations, these otherwise energetically plump spirits suddenly found themselves starved, ignored, no one around to pay attention to them. As the story goes, Zack and Addie, the young, vibrant French Quarter holdouts, became targets for the spirits. And since Zack was already suffering depression and PTSD, a dark French Quarter spirit, or dark French Quarter spirits possessed him, and drove Zack to commit the murder and desecration of Addie Hall. So to some, it was the spirits of the Quarter that got Zack. To others, it was the spirits of the Voodoo spiritual temple, no longer being worshipped and revered, that made their way up to Zack and Addie's apartment and took hold of the most susceptible one to possession, Zack Bowen. Remember, Zack and Addie lived directly above. And I can tell you firsthand, there was some shit with the Voodoo spiritual temple. I'm not saying this is good or bad. This is just what happened to me, personally, at the Voodoo spiritual temple. In one of my trips to New Orleans, I met Priestess Miriam. My friends and I went to the Voodoo spiritual temple, kind of check it out, since it was it's so much less touristy, so much unlike the other voodoo shops in the French Quarter, like Marie Laveau's House of Voodoo on Bourbon Street, or Reverend Zombie's House of Voodoo on St. Peter. We wanted to go to the off the beaten track one. So we go to the Voodoo spiritual temple, we enter, and there, sitting behind the counter, is Priestess Miriam. And she was an incredibly nice, just a sweet, sweet woman, okay? She greeted us, asked if we needed anything, and we're like, no, we're just looking. So we poked around the temple a bit, and Priestess Miriam asked me again if I was looking for something for someone in particular. And I said, yeah, I'm looking for something for my ma. And this is the craziest thing. I swear to God this is true. So I said, yeah, I'm looking for something for my ma. Priestess Miriam then turned around and pointed to this big old wooden lighthouse sitting on a shelf behind her. And she said to me, I think your mom would like that. Now here's the thing. My ma, she collects lighthouses. Everywhere me and Katie go, we always try to find her a lighthouse to add to her collection. This is honest to God truth. Yeah. There's no way in hell Priestess Miriam knew this, yet she knew my mom would like the lighthouse. And she would have had it too, but I didn't buy it. In fact, I politely said no thank you, and I immediately left the temple. I was freaked out, man. So yes, I absolutely believe there was something more to the Voodoo spiritual temple. Not saying it was bad.
No, yeah,
something.
It sounds like it's supernatural.
Legit.
Doesn't mean just bad. It just means
it's supernatural,
more than natural.
Perfect. Now, did spirits from the temple possess Zack? Likely not, but there was something there for sure.
Yeah, maybe it's like an activation thing. It exasperates the already troubling feelings and their own personal, hurricanes that Zack and Addie had already. I mean, she had it obviously from a long string of, abuse from childhood till then.
To adulthood.
And this guy, war does some fucked up things to people. I mean, Kosovo and Baghdad, those are not good places,
Abu Ghraib. I've heard of this story. I never knew he spent time at Abu Ghraib.
Yeah.
There's nothing that indicates he was part of
it's unhealthy for people it's completely unhealthy.
Even if you're a witness to some of the atrocities that were happening at that place.
Right.
It's going to fuck you up.
And his discharge, leading to, not him being able to be diagnosed with these things obviously sucks as a proof matter, but it's clearly there in his history. But even besides that, like, I think that even with those things, he probably could have, outlived the PTSD at some point had it not been for Katrina, which seems to be like not necessarily in the spirit sense or magical whatever, in the sense that it totally it made New Orleans and his immediate surroundings into those battlefields. So it made it into the PTSD he had been experiencing.
Yes,
and he never left there. So
never left the Middle East or Kosovo.
Never, exactly.
Yes.
It became that for him. If you want to talk pure psychological, that is the route I would go.
Absolutely. I'm with you on that.
And I mean, Addie is unfortunately not only, there's like a 1,000 of Addies around there in life. I mean, there's like many people like living like her, but hers is the most obvious. Just simply historical, like constant abuse.
Yep.
You mix sex with violence, and then guess what? When you find a love partner, you mix those two with that person too. It just goes along.
Yeah. Tragic, man.
It's hella tragic. And if you want to go on the spiritual side, like you think of spirits that attach to people, poltergeists or succubuses or succubi.
Succubi.
Thank you. Like I can imagine definitely Addie being having one of those attached, especially in the hours right after Hurricane Katrina, with these, like you said, spirits not being attention, right?
Paid attention to, right?
Right, and it seems like also like the way people treat spirits there, the more universally welcoming you are to that phenomena, the more likely you can, at least in a group setting, meaning 404,000 people living in the city at the time, they can, manifest and create it better, or like, they cradle that kind of energy a lot more than, let's say, LA, who, a bunch of people who most likely don't believe in that. So yeah, you can see all those things combining into an effect where like she could be totally attached, or a succubi could totally attached to her molestation times and all those trauma and all those memories, constantly feeding off it. And then like that's why she's always reacting that way. I can totally see that. And then but Zack is just way too violent. It's probably too explosive. And also, how do you know? You mentioned that he calmly strangled her?
His words.
Oh, okay, wow.
Those were his words.
I guess I believe that. Wow, that's
and
insane.
He said he was surprised by how easy it was.
Yeah, see, that kind of talk is like either completely fractured or he succumbed to whatever supernatural energies were taking over him.
And that's what that's what some people say happened.
It's one or the other. How do you just turn off the lights and let it be?
And that heinous.
Yeah.
I mean, that bad.
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder, like, imagine the steps. I don't know how much you actually know, because, you said it was a long suicide letter. But I wonder how much they know how...
Oh, man, about that letter, I tried. It's never been released full. Thing, yeah, just excerpts. I tried, believe me.
It's in some sort of, like, lockbox.
Police evidence room or something.
Evidence room, right. I wonder, like, all the steps he took, and I wonder how many of those times was the original good guy Zack lucid in any of those points, because
oh man, I don't know.
I mean, like
maybe when he was drunk or high, that was good time Zack,
Yeah, because I don't know if he he doesn't seem like a stupid individual. He seems like just bad luck. Also, he picked 2 strippers. That's not saying that's a terrible thing, but I'm saying, a lot of it's his fault too, as to how he got to this point in his life. But to how much did he spend with her corpse?
I want to say there was about 12 days, I think, from killing to suicide.
It's a big time.
I believe it's that. Yeah, and he spent nights sleeping with it, having sex with it. Yeah. Then he cut it up. Then he went out and partied for a couple of days like nothing ever happened. And it was either in his diary or in his suicide note where he said, I got up the next day and went to work, spent all my money. He said his quote was on good food, good drink, good strippers. So he went out and he partied after all this happened.
So if he did all of that, why isn't anybody questioning the whereabouts of Addie?
Yes, so that's a great point. He had told people that Addie robbed him of all his money and headed back to her hometown of Durham. That because people did ask, and that was his comeback. Was she robbed him and she took off, but headed back to her hometown.
And you probably could get away with that, knowing her
and knowing the French Quarter. It's rough and tumble there. The Vieux Carre.
You don't seem convinced. You don't seem convinced, Katie. You don't believe that story would have been believable?
No, if people really kind of knew her and him, they would have been like, that doesn't sound like her. Why would she just up and leave?
Also, here's
I'm sure she had friends that she would have been in touch with, and
I think a number of her friends knew that she was kind of flighty, could be violent, party, drinking, drugging. Maybe it wouldn't have been out of character. I don't know.
Well, either way, back then, how many missing persons? What could you do in time?
Not much you can do.
Obviously, she was already dead. Nothing you can do. But I'm saying, let's say you first hear that your friend Addie has been missing. You haven't seen her in 2 days. And then you see Zack at a bar and you ask her, what can you do if you're not sure? Other than going sleuthing yourself.
Yeah, show me your apartment. I don't believe you.
Other than that, which is clearly just a movie thing usually. There's a lot of fucked up things happening. Even 1.5 years out. It's not going to... how much faith do you have in a city that's still, trying to rebuild also?
That's the thing, too. Right?
You still see abandoned houses.
Yes.
Boats on streets. Maybe not that anymore.
Not anymore,
but for a while after.
Yes.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of people, a lot of New Orleanians say that since Katrina, the entire feel, vibe, call it what you want, of the French Quarter is completely different. A lot of investors came in and bought up these properties around the quarter for pennies to the dollar because they were destroyed.
I bet.
Revamped them,
Yeah, a lot of people took
rent
that.
them out as Airbnbs. A lot of people, half the population dropped. A lot of them didn't come back, replaced with brand new people that are not from there, they're from other, and completely changed the entire vibe of New Orleans.
Well, you guys have been there
Including
many
the spirits.
times.
Including
it has
the spirits.
changed
Do
from
you
when
feel
we
that
first went
change?
there. Oh yeah,
Do you feel that change this last week?
yes,
Did you?
yeah.
Does that change still different?
I remember
Well, I know that changed because
the
last time I went there was pre-Katrina.
Was it pre-Katrina already?
That's so
Oh, it's been so
wow.
long.
since I've been there. Yeah.
The second to last time Katie and I went there, Jackson Square at night definitely was different. Very ominous, very dangerous feeling. We never got a feeling like that. I've been there 15 times.
Yeah,
Did it
when
look
we-
the
Katie,
same
seven
but
or
feel
eight
that way,
time.
or did it feel that way?
Looks
and look
exactly the
differently?
same.
Wow, but it felt
Well,
differently.
Absolutely.
Before that, there were a lot more tarot cards and medians. You just pretty much saw that. Or it was kind of deserted.
Yeah, deserted, and it
The
felt
last
very
time there
ominous.
was a lot of... You didn't feel comfortable there.
Maybe the true tragedy
A lot
is
of
that
homeless
the-
people that were kind of residing there.
yeah.
And it's just upturned it. You
It
know?
did.
Maybe the true tragedy of this is the city of New Orleans, and where, obviously, I mean, that goes without saying with Katrina, but I'm saying in the sense that these people leaving, a lot of them probably being believers, practitioners, and good-natured, open-minded people, like, are not there to promote the positivity of the crazy energies that are there. So now it's, like, out there to manifest negatively.
How
Right?
it feels like,
Or stagnant, but it's not stagnant because you said you feel dangerous. So maybe it's what people are feeling there more, viscerally than it is calm,
yeah.
or positive.
Right,
Even
right.
walking down Bourbon, I still keep an eye out over my shoulders.
No, that's just smart
when
to
I
do.
first went the first couple of times, I didn't feel that I had to do that. Now I go and I'm always on the complete alert.
Like on edge.
Yeah.
Yes, something.
There's a lot.
gonna
Yeah, there
happen.
was a lot of on edge feeling this
Yes.
last trip because we had a far walk from the hotel
Yeah.
to where we like to be in the French Quarter, and it got pretty.
Like when we
Weird
went
sometimes,
to
yeah.
the
It's the French
homemade
nickel
pasta
now.
place, I was holding your hand, hey, this
Yeah.
doesn't look right.
Right. Good
And I'm
food,
that
though.
kind of person that if I see people that are different from us, I will talk to them, be like, hey, how you doing?
Oh,
So it kind of clears them away. Like they're not a threat, they're not afraid of us or whatnot. And I kept trying to do that. And he's just like, shut up. I'm like, no, I have to. Growing up in Chicago around all that stuff, I kind of picked that up, but I was still nervous.
Well, yeah.
It's like me with the knife the other day.
Oh, with Lexy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just bring this to the end, and then we could talk some more if you'd like.
Wait, keep interrupting you until you never finish? Got it.
Well, I just want to let you know, I keep saying the Voodoo Spirit Temple was formerly at this address, so I just wanted you to know the Voodoo Spiritual Temple caught fire on February 1, 2016, caused by faulty electric. The temple suffered severe damage to its structure and its contents, and sadly, a lot of rare artifacts were lost. Thankfully, no one was hurt. Now, the building that the temple sat in, and as well as Zack and Addie's apartment, it's an old Creole cottage listed on the New Orleans Historic Registry, and it was built in 1829, and most of it was original. Now, fortunately, Priestess Miriam was able to carry on her traditions at a new location, 1428 North Rampart Street, so listeners know.
I have a question about that real quick. These houses, these temples, sorry, it doesn't make a big difference if they're moved, or they're not beholden to their position.
I don't think
That's a
so.
good question.
I think it's all about the practitioners.
Because a lot of either religious or spiritual beliefs in nature, especially the old ones, archaic stuff, some of the stuff is based on where you are.
Yeah,
Not everything.
no, I don't.
Like a church can be anywhere, right?
I think where
But-
they hold their ceremonies
Yes, what I
has
was
to
gonna
be
say.
a certain way.
Okay.
So the
Yeah,
original
there was
voodoo.
ceremonies in the old location.
There was.
I'm sure
they had a nice courtyard.
Activity and energy there.
Yeah, they had a beautiful courtyard at the original spiritual temple where they held ceremonies regularly.
Okay.
Marie Laveau would always be on the banks of Bayou St. John, St. John's Bayou. So I think location does matter, but it also matters with the practitioner too, where they go. Where they are, it's like there's the ceremony, right? They bring their own party. Kind of like that house that we always pass close to our neighborhood that used to be a psychic shop for years.
Yeah.
Now they can't fucking sell or rent that place to save their lives. It's always up for sale or always up for rent.
And I told Jason that I want to go and investigate over there.
Yeah. So do I believe doing rituals like this or whatever the psychic was doing in this home, do I think it could punch a hole and maybe let stuff in or energies linger about? Absolutely.
The upside down is right below. Right?
I was
That's
just
right.
going to say that. Stop
And I
being
think,
in my head.
Hey,
I think that's happening here in close to our neighborhood with this one house. I'm sure it was happening in the original Voodoo Spiritual Temple location
Maybe
as well.
I'll move up here. I don't mind. I'll see.
Do
great.
it.
I mean, Lexy won't like it, but
But, at the end of the day, the story of Zack and Addie, it is a tragic one. Yet it's incredibly interesting because it involves star-crossed lovers seemingly bent on destroying one another. It involves the Eerie French Quarter, a historic storm, ghosts, voodoo, and murder, the likes of which have hardly ever seen. And I don't know why the story of Zack Bowen and Addie Hall isn't well known, but I can tell you, there's a story I'll never forget.
Me too.
I'm going to call this. I'm going to title this Zack and Addie.
Make a porno.
Zack and Addie's Infinite Playlist.
A Zack and Addie's Infinite Playlist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to, I'm not joking about it or making light of it. It's terrible. It's fucking terrible. It's sad. It's gruesome. It's horrible. But it's interesting. And it's not told that often.
No, unfortunately.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I honestly don't know.
It made the rounds, right? You saw it on CNN. You said no. That was something else.
It was Katrina.
That was Katrina. Sorry,
yeah.
my bad.
Now, it's been on Go shows. What Nick Roth, whatever the fuck his last name is, the old Ghost Adventures guy, and some chick went there and they did an investigation. It was on TV. They said they felt cold
Pre-fire.
spots and heard things pre-fire, of course. Yeah. Bloody Mary, actually, the voodoo queen of New Orleans, Bloody Mary. I believe she bought the building after it had fire. There was something, I read an article where people of New Orleans were all up in arms because Bloody Mary was profiting off of the murder. She had the stove up there, she had the tub up there.
Yeah, I'm remembering that.
I don't remember if she owned it, rented it, pre-fire, post-fire. I don't remember, but it was it was pre-fire.
It was pre-fire because I believe, if I hear the story correctly, the writing on the wall could still be somewhat seen.
Was that it?
Yeah. If it was post, you wouldn't be able to see it.
Yeah. So there was some hubbubaloo about that too. But really outside, in New Orleans, it's known. But outside of New Orleans, this story really isn't talked about. There's a few documentaries out there, a lot on YouTube of people kind of telling the story. But really, considering the story, you would think it'd be much more famous of a story. But it's really not. And I don't know why. I don't know why. But I was happy to cover it.
Yeah, for sure.
So. Any final thoughts? That's what I got.
You mean the whole story? That's what you got? Yeah.
That's what I got. 10 pages of notes.
I would say drop the mic, but don't
Single-spaced 11-point font.
Holy smokes.
I have to deal with this every 2 weeks.
So, listeners, I hope you enjoyed the story of Zack and Addie and all of our commentary about New Orleans.
Zaddy. Sorry.
Oh, I like that.
Too soon.
How is that?
Too soon. What was it? 2003?
He crossed the line.
Three?
It's still
6?
horrible. 5. It's 6. I
6.
think. You're gonna make me go back up in my notes.
Yep.
Yes, sir.
He loves that.
I think
by the
it
way.
was 6.
I love asking him a question.
Making him
What
work.
year was that?
It's
when
2:30 in the morning.
What
I'm
year
very-
was it when I cared about this thing?
Yeah, 2006.
Okay.
So, listeners, hope you enjoyed it. Oscar, you're going to play us out with some more Jackson Square blues?
Don't tell me what to do.
Yeah.
I'm asking.
Oh yeah, sure.
Are there going to be outtakes? I don't know.
Yeah, probably. I mean, you guys.
And thanks, guys, for having me back on again. And I hope
you're
I can
welcome.
come back again.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Don't kick me off again, okay?
Okay, I'll try.
You're still sleeping on the couch
Love you.
tonight.
Yay.
You know, Jay, I wanted to put on the podcast a little shout out to our new friend, Elaine, that we met in New Orleans. She brought us over to the open house. I have to text her the podcast information. So, Elaine, if you're listening, we just wanted to say hi.
I am recording.
Well, then, you know, when
She was a super nice lady.
I saw online a friend had a panic attack because their cat brought in a bat and put it in their bed.
Yeah, they do that.
Assholes.
Yeah.
Cats are assholes.
Yeah, they are assholes. No, but I've seen. So I'll give you two instances. One, I saw maybe three. So I saw this wounded bird once in the front of my house, like 2 houses away, and it was wounded because it couldn't fly and it was flopping. One of its wings was kind of broken or something, and it was clearly running away from something. And then I saw 2 neighborhood cats like flanking him. Ooh. And I was able to grab it that time, but I've seen what they do to birds, man. When they grab onto them, they don't just like immediately kill them at all. They play with they play with them.
But hurting it as they're playing with it.
Yeah.
Oh,
They're
like
the true murderers.
Like swiping. As soon as it starts about to fly out, they swipe it again to bring it back down. They play with their food before they chomp down on it.
wow.
And one time, Lexy's cat somehow got a hold of a rat. And they're indoor cats only. And they got a hold of a rat. And they saw a carnage of blood trails all over the house because they were just fucking with it and just battling around everywhere until it died. It's like they're really vicious things.
They are. Claws out.
Yeah.
Jesus. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. All right. Let's do it in 3, 2.
Could you turn it on, please?
No.
Could you turn it on?
Is it on?
Are we recording?
Yes.
Hey, don't go like this. Don't go like this.
Yeah,
Keep
Joe and Dave.
To your mouth.
I was making sure that
To your
I was
mouth.
asking him off.
No. These are all.
If it's recording. So
You could say whatever.
beat you and make it sound like it even.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty fun.
Left field, Katie.
Left field Katie. Can you repeat that left field Katie thing you just did?
Well, because she'll come up with just things far out of left field. Like, we were just talking. Oscar, You're like, oh, I hate being the third wheel. I'm like, Oscar, you're not the third wheel. We're like a trike. Katie and I are the back 2 wheels, and you're the front wheel, just pulling us along, driving the show, you know?
E.T.
And then Katie's like,
home.
yeah, E.T.'s a great movie.
I did not say that. I said
And then we're like, we literally both stopped, looked at her,
Oscar is in the front of the
and we're like,
bike.
what the fuck are you talking about? And even Oscar, who always has Katie's back, said, no, that was out of left field.
That was really out of left field. And also they were using regular bicycles, not tricycles.
Completely
You know
different
what?
modes of transportation.
He's ahead of us. I thought of E.T. in the basket.
Kids riding a skateboard. Katie's like, monster trucks are great.
I would never say that. Totally different.
fucking
At least
crazy.
A tricycle and a bicycle are somewhat
This
the
is what I
same.
got to deal with. This is why you're never on the show.
That's why you sleep on the
That's
couch
a-
half the time.
Damn.
Fuck.
I would say, Katie, can you eat the mic?
Can I eat the
Keep
mic?
it close to your...
Hey.
Wow.
Katie, just
Halfway there.
settle down, Katie. Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ.
We're regretting this already.
Oh my gosh.
Why do we do this? Why do I do this to myself?
I'm having fun finally.
Yay. And she's back.
I'm sure everyone missed you, Katie. Like 95% of our listeners are going to be like, who's this?
Yeah, I know, right?
Whose
It's been
fault is
so
that?
long. It's been a long
Damn.
time.
And whose fault is that?
Some schniz.
Schniz. That's the technical term. Schniz.
I've heard many terms from him.
I thought we lost.
That's a mouthful right there. I don't know where to begin with that one.
Uh-huh.
You know what that reminds me of? The Terminator.
Did you know that they're coming out with another one?
Yes.
Sarah and John Connor are coming back.
Just go with it, Katie. That's good.
Yeah. That was a thing at you, and he got it after a minute of silence, but he got it.
Reminds me of Terminator.
Can I say that throughout the whole show? Oh, wow. Nice. My keyboard remembered a word that doesn't exist that I sometimes use.
Oh, what word was
when
that?
someone says, oh, that's sweet, or I say something and they say sweet, or whatever they say. A lot of people say sweet a lot. So I always put unbitter.
I thought you were going to say like dandy.
No. The unbitter, right? So they're just opposite, but not really. And I remembered. Nice. Unbitter. I totally remembered.
You don't want to see what my iPhone dictionary has in it.
Oh, I want to see that. You know?
That reminds me of the time I saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie.
Okay, where is this going?
No, that just reminded me of that.
Oh, nice. Yeah. I was kind of hoping you would give some sort of crazy response as to how to get there.
Just reminded me of that story.
If this mockery, you're sleeping on the couch.
I am the walrus, right? It's just like I am the walrus.
Exactly. Clearly, Paul's dead.
Yeah,
is what I got out of that story.
Right. Exactly.
Hi, Katie.
Bye, Jason.
Did we set up that joke enough so we can say it throughout the show and people will understand it?
Probably not.
Okay. Well, it's okay.
All right, ready?
Yes, let's do it. In 7, 20, 3, 2,
420.
420.
God, fucking edit that out.
Oh, yay.
When have you 420'd?
Oh, she's probably 420 in right now.
Nah, I don't see any glass in
She's
this.
all about that shit now.
Are you?
Well, the CBD.
Really?
Yeah.
Are you fucking accusing me of this?
CBD is very healthy for
It
you.
is perfectly healthier than cigarettes.
Glass houses, Katheryn. Glass houses.
What do you mean glass houses?
It reminds me of Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh, my. No.
Those who live in glass houses should not throw stones.
Anywho, probably in high school.
Yeah?
Yeah,
The last roach you got? Last blunt?
probably.
Yeah.
Rolled
Yeah.
that fatty boom Betty.
All it did was make me want to go to sleep. Giggle and sleep.
Me too. It makes me sleepy.
And I don't like that.
It turns me murderous.
That is true.
Yes.
Saw firsthand
You're the
on that
one in a millionth reaction.
Come down, try and check on him, make sure he's okay. Get out. Okay, bye.
Freaking the fuck out, dude.
I think in the history of you two, 21 years, you said?
21 or 22?
21.
Being serious. You
What was that little steeple you made with
the church steeple
Oh,
reminds her of VT, right? So
Yeah, exactly. Elliot.
what was I saying? Anyway, I think you provided way worse nights for her than she has, probably for you.
Oh, undoubtedly.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Because you wake up and I'm murdered.
Dude, I was going to set this place on fire.
Honey, give me a hatchet.
It was really scary.
Yeah.
I will never touch that shit. Katie, on the other hand,
Yeah. I can bring you some edibles, Katie, if you want.
I wanted to go ice skating one time.
we call her Smoke Dog now.
Yeah, it was iced out because it was winter. We were out in a
Probably
parking lot
Fullerton
or something. It was with Jessica in high school.
Avenue. Oh, of course.
And yeah, I was just like, oh, ice. Let's go ice skating.
Were you
We're having
high
so
at the
much fun.
time? Is that what
Uh-huh.
you're saying? Oh.
But we're talking 420, right? That was one experience.
420.
Oh, yeah. I don't know how you got there, by the way.
What, 420?
Yeah.
When you were counting down?
Yeah, but I didn't. I said 20. I didn't say 420.
I know.
That was all I
was
needed, huh?
That's all I needed.
Okay. If I said 17,
Oh,
like 3
boy.
plus 3 and 4 is 4. No, one time, this is one of my high things. I used to, greenhouse my car. Mm-hmm. Fucking greenhouse it.
Really?
Right? Oh, yeah. My first car, mind you.
I didn't know you smoked, I guess.
Oh, yeah, at the time when I did. And you don't know shit about me. Oh, yeah, I'm kidding.
Right? Oh,
All
my
these
gosh.
years, I didn't. Did you know?
Yeah.
You knew Oscar smoked? I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Remember, we went to college together. She knows a lot. I used to park a few blocks away from my house and just park and just smoke up, right? And we one time, it was winter. I forgot who I was with, either Luke or Milkweed, some Polish guy. and then we saw this woman in like winter gear, like using skis in the sidewalk.
That had to be hilarious while you were high.
It was hilarious, and then we got immediately worried that we were like that we got some fucked up weed, that we were hallucinating.
Oh God!
Because like, who the fuck, right? What are those things? It was so icy. This lady was totally skiing down like Roscoe Avenue.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
It's awesome.
so.
I wish I had fun stories like that.
Yeah, I mean, now
weed.
it's every time you tell the murderer's rampage weed story,
Yeah.
it's funny to me now.
Well, it is kind of funny in retrospect, but
Yeah.
not at the time.
No. I mean, it wasn't funny for me at the time too, seeing this woman like blow my mind.